In the quiet, rolling hills of Montana lived an old rancher named Jedediah. With hands as tough as leather and a heart as wide as the plains, he had spent his entire life working the land. His days were a familiar rhythm of mending fences, tending to his small herd of cattle, and watching the sun dip below the horizon from his worn-out porch chair. Life was simple, predictable, and just the way he liked it. One crisp autumn morning, a letter arrived that would change everything. It was from a layer in a town he hadn't heard of in years, informing him that his estranged cousin, Elias, had passed away. Jedediah and Elias had been close as boys, sharing wild adventures and whispered dreams, but life had pulled them in different directions. Elias had chased fortune in the city while Jedediah stayed rooted to the land. The letter stated that Elias had left him his entire estate, a sprawling property just a few counties over. Jedediah was puzzled. He hadn't spoken to Elias in over 40 years. Why would he leave him everything? With a mix of curiosity and a heavy heart, he packed a small bag, told his neighbor to keep an eye on his cattle, and drove his old pickup truck towards his unexpected inheritance. The property was grander than he'd imagined. A large, slightly neglected farmhouse stood proudly, surrounded by acres of overgrown fields. But what caught Jedediah's eye was the magnificent horse barn. It was a huge, beautifully constructed building, far larger than any barn he'd ever owned. It looked sturdy, but eerily silent. According to the lawyer's notes, the barn was supposed to be empty. Elias had sold off all his livestock years ago. Jedediah found a set of old, rusty keys and walked towards the massive barn doors. A sense of unease crept over him. The air was still, and the silence was almost deafening. With a mighty heave, he slid one of the heavy doors open. A sliver of sunlight cut through the dusty darkness, illuminating dancing particles in the air. The barn smelled of old hay, wood, and something else. Something he couldn't quite place. As his eyes adjusted, he saw that the layer was right. The stalls were all empty. Cobwebs draped every corner, and a thick layer of dust covered everything. It was a ghost of a place that once must have been full of life. He walked down the central aisle, his boots echoing on the wooden floorboards. He felt a pang of sadness for his cousin and the life he never knew. He was about to turn and leave when he heard it. A faint sound. A soft, almost imperceptible shuffling coming from the very last stall at the far end of the barn. His heart skipped a beat. He froze, listening intently. Was it just the wind? A rat scurrying in the walls? Then he heard it again, a little louder this time. A soft whicker. Jedediah's breath caught in his throat. It was the sound of a horse, but that was impossible. The barn was supposed to be empty. Cautiously, he made his way toward the final stall. The door was latched shut with a heavy, modern lock, unlike the rusty ones on the other stalls. Peering through the slats, his eyes widened in disbelief. Inside wasn't just one horse, but a magnificent mare with a coat the color of fresh cream. And nestled beside her, sleeping soundly in the clean straw, was a newborn foal, its gangly legs tucked underneath it. The mare looked at him with large, intelligent eyes, not with fear, but with a gentle curiosity. She was well fed, and her stall was clean, a stark contrast to the rest of the derelict barn. Jedediah was utterly baffled. Who had been caring for this horse? Why was she hidden away like a secret? His mind raced with questions. As he fumbled with the strange lock, he noticed a small, leather-bound journal tucked into a crevice in the stall door. His name, Jedediah, was written on the cover in familiar handwriting. It was from Elias. With trembling hands, he opened the journal. The first page was a letter addressed to him. Elias wrote about his regrets, about how he wished they hadn't lost touch. He explained that after a lifetime of chasing wealth, he had found his true passion late in life. Breeding a unique line of horses, a lineage known for their intelligence and gentle nature. This beautiful mare, whom he had named Hope, was the last of that line. Elias confessed that he had fallen ill suddenly. Knowing his time was short and fearing his prized horse would be sold off or fall into the wrong hands, he made a secret arrangement. He hired a local stable hand, a young woman named Clara, to care for Hope in secret, paying her well in advance to ensure the mare and her unborn foal would be looked after until Jedediah arrived. He knew, he wrote, that Jedediah was the only person in the world he could trust to understand the value of a life connected to animals and the land. He believed that only Jedediah would continue his legacy, not for money, but for the love of the creatures themselves. As Jedediah read, tears welled in his eyes. This wasn't just an inheritance of property. It was an inheritance of trust, a bridge across 40 years of silence. He looked back at the Mare, who nudged her foal gently. The little one stirred, let out a tiny nicker, and shakily tried to stand. In that moment, the old, dusty barn didn't feel empty at all. It felt full of promise, of new beginnings. The next day, a young woman with a kind smile and dirt on her jeans approached the barn. It was Clara. She explained how she had been coming every day, just as Elias had asked, tending to hope and waiting for Jedediah's arrival. Together, they opened the stall, and Jedediah reached out a weathered hand to stroke the Mare's nose. She leaned into his touch, a silent acceptance passing between them. Jedediah sold the grand farmhouse and most of the land. He didn't need it. He moved Hope and her foal, who he named Promise, back to his own humble ranch. The magnificent empty barn left behind by his cousin was a symbol of a life he didn't want. But the secret it held 2 beautiful horses. And a final message of love and trust was a gift that breathed new life into his own. The old rancher was no longer just tending to his cattle. He was now the guardian of his cousin's legacy, a legacy not of wealth, but of hope and promise. And as he watched the little foal grow stronger each day, galloping across the familiar fields of his home, Jedediah knew his simple life had just become richer than he could have ever imagined. He had found a new purpose, a final connection to the cousin he thought he had lost forever. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more.